Hello and welcome to the third online session brought to you by Sama Audit Systems and Softwares Private Limited, India. In today's session, we will identify how to study and identify high-risk audit groups through the correlation feature in IDEA software. Our learning objectives for the session is how to prepare the data for the correlation task. Getting the data together for the right audit group and the right time period is very critical in correlation. The join function is a very good feature to bring the data from different sources together in one file for creating a base data to apply correlation. Once the data is in a single file, you can apply the correlation feature, and we're going to be doing that on a case study for overtime and production. It's very critical that we have two fields to correlate, which in our case study are going to be overtime and production. You also need to have an audit unit field, which is a grouping field or a dimension on which the correlation score will be computed by IDEA. And in our example, that is the plant shop center. Once we get the correlation result, after we apply the correlation task, it is very important for us to understand how to interpret the result correctly in line with our original analytic requirement. We will also be discussing other cases where correlation have been successfully applied to identify high-risk audit unit. Now over to IDEA. I've created a folder in IDEA called Online IDEA Training Session Day 3, and I also have with me in the working folder the data, which is the correlation overtime and production case study data. Now let me import the data. I click on the import assistant. It being a Microsoft Excel file, I choose Microsoft Excel. I select the file through the File Explorer, and you'll notice at this stage that there are two worksheets in the file. There's an overtime worksheet and there's a production worksheet. You need to highlight both the worksheets, and we click on OK. Now if you look at the data, you'll notice that the files have been very simply constructed. As we understand, we would like to correlate overtime and production to identify any discrepancy in the overtime with regards to production. What we've done is we've put together three essential fields. We have the plant shop center. This is the audit unit field or the grouping field or the dimension on which the correlation score will be calculated. We have the time period, which in our case is the week, and we've got a uniform time period for each audit unit. So there are 10 weeks for each audit unit. In the first file, we have the total overtime hours for that plant shop center for the week. The second file, on the other hand, contains the very same fields with the same time period, but it contains the total output in units for the same week for the same plant shop center. So you can actually gather from this case study that your dimensions and your time period need to be exactly the same in both the files. Now, if for any reason there is no data available for a particular time period, you still need to include that row in the data with a value 0 so that the correlation works with the uniform time period. Now I'm going to prepare the data for analysis using the join. So I keep the overtime file as my active database. This is going to be the primary database. I go to analysis, relate and join. You can see my overtime file is the primary file. I now select the secondary file, which in my case will be the production file. The common field in both the files, now this is very important, will be the audit unit field, which is the plant shop center. And don't forget, this is a common mistake we make. We tend to leave out the time period. The time period is also the secondary matching field, which in our case is the week. So you always remember, whenever you're doing correlation, let's say you're correlating sales and returns or sales and discount, the branch, the product will be the grouping field or the audit unit, and the week or the month or the quarter will be the time period. Don't forget to take that in the matching key fields. I'm going to limit the fields to display. I'm only going to take the output in units from the secondary file. I use matches only, and I give the file name here as correlation based data. So friends, you'll notice that I've completed the first part of the online training session where I've prepared the data for the correlation, and notice my fields to correlate overtime and output are in the same file. My audit unit is also in the same file, and the time period is available uniformly for each audit unit. I'm now ready to take on the correlation. So I go to Analysis, Statistics, Correlation. You notice here in correlation that the section on the left is the fields to correlate, and the audit unit field is in the center. So here we choose overtime and output in units as the fields to correlate, and we choose the audit unit field as plant shop center. Now in my example, I've kept it simple. I have only 4 audit unit fields, but when you work with live data, you could have a few hundred cost centers. You could have a few hundred customers or distributors or stock locations. It's fine. It will work very well with any number of audit units. Check the box here, include all the audit units, and let's create a result. I'm going to leave the name as it is, correlation. Another thing, friends, you need to notice is that the number of records are 10 in all the audit units, and this is what I cannot re-emphasize again and I'm reiterating it, that your time period needs to be uniform for all the audit units. So if I'm doing this for, let us say, 53 weeks in the year, 54 weeks in the year, I should have 54, 54, 54 in all the audit units. Please take care of that and prepare your data accordingly. Gonna click on OK, and you can see that we're getting the audit unit with the correlation score. Now we come down to the interpretation part. This is very important. As all of us know, the correlation score can vary from -1 to +1, which is highly negatively correlated or highly positively correlated with something smack in the center, which is no correlation. Now friends, if you look at Paint Shop, which has a negative correlation of 0.93, that normally indicates an inverse relationship. A positive correlation would indicate a direct relationship. So now if I go into the data and I put a filter only on Paint Shop, you'll notice something very interesting here. I have the Paint Shop view up on my screen through the criteria mode out here. The output in units from week number 1 to week number 10 is dropping. There's a gradual drop in the output, whereas for the same period, the overtime is on a rise. And the reason the correlation score, if I go back to the correlation score, it's a 0.93. It actually, the way to interpret that is the decrease in the output from week to week and the increase in the overtime from week to week are almost moving at par. So the delta is almost the same. And now the reason we call this a very effective activity in high risk audit unit tracking is because we've identified out of 4 audit units, 1 audit unit where you need to deep dive into the overtime records and study why the overtime is going up over a 10-week period when the output was actually coming down. Now friends, there are a number of very interesting instances where correlation has been applied. We can quote an example of an IT company which applied correlation on the revenue data. They actually correlated manpower deployed with revenue earned project-wise. So manpower deployed in hours and revenue earned in the respective currency was the correlation field, and the audit unit field was the project. And we noticed certain projects where manpower deployed was going up, but revenue earned was coming down. And when they took a deep dive into the project, they noticed that there were certain fictitious employees on the bench who were being booked to the project and they were not contributing to the revenue. So a very interesting use case. Another use case we noticed is correlation was applied for a large tea garden where the audit unit field was the tea garden code and the correlation field was the tea plucked in kilos versus contract labor payments. And there we noticed that for certain tea gardens having a negative correlation, the tea plucked in kilos was coming down, but the contract labor payments were going up. And there, again, after a detailed review of that high risk audit unit, they noticed that that particular tea garden had a number of fictitious contract labor employees in the garden. There are many of such cases, and we would be happy to talk about it in future training sessions. Thank you for attending online session 3 and look forward to seeing you in online session 4.